Ahoy hoy, welcome back to my channel. I'm going to try to keep my voice low as possible because my significant other and my children are sleeping right now. And plus I have a roommate downstairs who's currently playing games, so if you hear him, that's who it is. Today's my birthday. I'm 42 today. I almost forgot how old I was and I haven't even drank yet. So I thought I would celebrate my birthday by doing a truth and drink game. I got this idea from Sam and Colby, so I'll put the videos in the description box so you guys can look it up. Even though these were like a few years ago, I just came across them last autumn, became a fan, so yeah. So I'll start. And if I don't want to answer a truth, I drink a shot. And of course, I'm going to hide the bottle so you don't see the brand. But if you do see the brand, they are not sponsoring this video. Alright, here we go. I'm going to take a shot anyway. I don't care. Oh, sweet and fiery. Okay. First question. Do you miss living in the States? At times I do. I mostly miss it because of my family being there and my friends being there. And I miss Taco Bell, oddly enough. I love Taco Bell. It's a guilty pleasure. They don't have that here in Sweden. Other times, not so much. So, yeah. Second question. What's your favorite thing about living in Sweden? The healthcare. Straight up. I have asthma. Asthma medicine is a lot more expensive in the States than it is here. So yes. 3. Have you ever been in a bar fight? No. I hate conflict. What's the worst date you've been on? There's actually 2 that tie. And they're blind dates. Well, one was a blind date. One was me meeting up with somebody from, I think back then it was called the Spark Match or Spark Match. It's okay, Cupid now. And while we got along online, when we met in person, it was like awkwardly silent. And I kind of tied for the other blind date I had that I was set up with by a friend of mine in church. And it was her ex-boyfriend, and it was also kind of awkward. So, yeah. What is the grossest thing you have done? I thought about answering this, but I don't think I'm going to answer this because I feel like it's too disgusting. Tempting. You know what? I think I'm going to answer it. I'm going to take a shot first. Yeah, that's 2. Okay. So, back in 2015, when we lived in the last house, we lived out in the middle of nowhere. And we had a well system. There was actually 2 wells. The one that was there originally wasn't quite good enough, and then my significant other's grandfather built a new one. Well, that one actually started drying up in 2015. So we spent a lot of time in 2015 having issues with water in our house. Like, we couldn't get running water. And when you're having issues with water, you realize you take for granted indoor plumbing and stuff. Now, we did have, like, big canisters of water that we got from neighbors and friends and family, but, you know, it was a pain in the ass. And one thing I did, which is the grossest thing I ever did, really, was our toilets became basically like indoor latrines. And I won't get too much into graphic detail. And if you're eating and drinking and you're sensitive to the subject, you might want to not drink and eat right now. But in order to get the toilets to flush, we would have to wait till stuff gets to a certain level in the toilet bowl. And then you couldn't flush the toilet the way it was because it would clog. So I would put on plastic gloves and I would get a lot of the toilet paper out of there, among some other things, and put it in the diaper genie that we had for the kids because they were both in diapers at the time. And that, y'all, was so nasty. I do not miss living in that house. Now, granted, the well eventually got fixed. We got more water put in it. But living in that house was just a nightmare, and I do not miss living in it. So, this house has city water, so, yeah. What is the weirdest thing you've Googled? Considering I'm a writer, a lot of things. I've come across a lot of weird things doing research for my novels. Hell, even when I did a fanfic for Saw. Just, like, you know, in my, I think I've changed it, but, like, when I still had a character in mind be a medical examiner, I was exploring stuff about morgues and autopsies and all kinds of stuff like that. And then I have, like, researched other stuff, like carbon monoxide poisoning, like arsenic poisoning, all kinds of stuff like that. Because I'm a writer, you know. I'm a published writer first, then I'm a YouTuber, that kind of thing. God, I'm getting hot now. I've only had 2 shots. Okay. 3, or no, that's not the third question. Shit. You can see I'm already getting tipsy. I may not be the review queen today, but I am the queen of being tipsy after having so little. That was not question 3. I didn't number them. I should just say the question. Anyway, the question is, what is the drunkest I've ever been? I'm going to tell it. I'm just going to take a drink because I feel like it. I know I'm not playing this right, but I don't care. It's my birthday, and I want to get loaded. Even though it doesn't take me much to get loaded. Skull. Okay. So the drunkest I've ever been was 2009. So I was about, well, let's see. 27, I think. Yeah, 27. And I went to a club with friends of mine. And we had a few drinks before that, mostly ciders. And while most people don't get drunk off of cider, I do. However, the drink that messed me up the most that night was the infamous Long Island iced tea that I think has 6 shots in it. And tequila is one of them. And tequila and I, we're not good friends. It messes me up. I can just drink a Long Island iced tea and that would make me drunk off my ass. And this on top of the other drinks I had, and I think I had like 4 drinks in total by this point. Upped it. So, this is the day that I got thrown out of a bar or a club for being too drunk, even though I wasn't disturbing anybody or, you know, being disruptive or unruly. What had happened was I was sitting down in a chair near the bar. My friend was going to order me some water so I can start getting sober a little bit. And I see someone from security walking around. And I'm like, uh-oh, I better look awake. Otherwise they might throw me out for looking too drunk. And I thought I sat up straight. Next thing you know, I feel a tap. And it's security. They're like, can you come with us outside? At first I thought they were just giving me fresh air so I can sober up a little bit. No, they were throwing me out of the club for being too intoxicated despite me not being unruly or disruptive. I was just dozing off. And my friends thought this was hilarious because they never knew anybody to get thrown out of a club for that way. Because it, like I said, does not take me much. And of course, there's a cop car riding around looking for anybody who's intoxicated. And my friends are standing in front of me so they don't catch me. And they never did. My significant other got to there, picked us up, we went home. And let me tell you all, that was the worst hangover I ever had. Not only did it feel like someone was taking something to my skull, but I got sick so much that it was literally making my throat raw. And I haven't been that drunk since. I learned my lesson. So yeah. Have you ever fancied a cartoon character? If so, who? Yes, I have. I liked Michelangelo from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, particularly from the 80s series, because that's the series I grew up with. I liked Bucky O'Hare. I think those are the only two I liked, if I'm not mistaken. And I ever had a serious crush on. So yeah. When was the last time you wet the bed? Yeah, I'm going to invoke the Fifth Amendment on that one. The right to remain silent. So this is shot, 3, 4? I've lost count already. Okay, let me think. I had a shot before I started. I had a shot before I said what was the grossest thing I ever did. I'm actually on 3, I think. Oh well. It's 3 or 4. I don't know. Okay. What's the one thing you never do for all the money in the world? Play on a Ouija board. I'm not joking. There's other things I wouldn't do for money, but that you couldn't get me to do for money. They had a commercial in 1991 on Ouija boards. I was 9 at the time. And y'all, I knew even as a 9-year-old, those were not good news. Granted, I had psychic ability even when I was probably about 7 years old, a result of my Uncle Chris dying. And I knew even at a young age those were not a good idea. And little secret, when The Exorcist was re-released in 2000 with extra footage, like the spiral walk, as I was working at the movie theater at the time, so I got to see it for free. That made my decision to not try those things even more solid. Because here's the reality. If you don't know, first of all, The Exorcist terrifies me beyond belief. For a non-gory movie that's a psychological thriller, it terrifies me. The thing that I learned is that the book in the movie is based off true events of a boy that was 14 years old who got possessed by something when he was 14 in the county that I'm from, in Maryland. That's right. He got possessed in Prince George's County. My home county in Maryland. Now, I think Cottage City, which is where he was at, is south in Prince George's County, if I'm not mistaken. I'm more north towards the border with Anne Arundel. Yeah. So I will not play a Ouija board even if you pay me that much money. Because Ouija boards are the paranormal version of box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get with one. And while I have a deluded belief in my head that nothing dark and negative will ever mess with me, I know not to tangle around with it. So yeah. Oh, I'm definitely feeling it now. I'm feeling so hot. Okay. What is your most absurd deal breaker? I don't know. See, I've been with the same guy. Excuse me, even if that wasn't a loud burp. I've been with the same guy since 2003. Almost 21 years now. So I don't know what my deal breakers would be anymore. I mean, other than the obvious, I don't know what deal breakers I have that would be considered observed. Observed? Did I say observed? I meant absurd. Yeah, I'm feeling it, guys. I'm feeling it. I am the queen of being a lightweight. I'm a certified lightweight. Have been this way since my 20s. I just realized I've been drinking for 21 years now. If I did the math right. I'm not good with math. Anyway. Okay. So, next question was, how about opening up about your diagnosis? This is from one of my fans on YouTube. If you've been with me for a while, you know I have something. I'm going to be a little brave tonight, but I'm going to drink a little bit because it's going to be a half-truth. Not a half-truth, but I'm only going to say half of it. But I'm going to drink a full shot anyway because why not? It's my birthday and I want to get messed up. And it doesn't take too much to do that. I'm a cheap date when it comes to booze. Oh. I almost forgot what I was going to say there for a second. Okay. So the reason why I took a shot is that I'm still scared talking about what I was diagnosed with initially back in 2021. 2020, yeah, I said that right. And this is after a year-long investigation to see what I had, because I thought I had Asperger's. And in Sweden, they do an investigation for a year. And there's like a 6-person team. You got a doctor, you got a speech therapist, you got 2 psychiatrists, and you got 2 psychologists to analyze you and come to a decision what you have. And first you go through interviews, a basic interview to see if they think you have anything. If you do, they bring you to this team of people to diagnose you. And you do more interviews. Then you do a physical to make sure that there's nothing going on with your body that will be affecting you mentally and vice versa. By the by, this is when I learned I had a vitamin D deficiency. almost forgot what I was going to say there for a second. They also do a drug test if you're an adult. I almost said human. I'm sorry. I know you guys are seeing a different me tonight. I'm sorry about that. But, they do a drug test if you're an adult to make sure no drugs are messing with your mind. And obviously, I came clean. Then they do an assessment test, and they do an 80 question from an Asperger's ADHD questionnaire, where you had to answer, I've always had this, I never had this, I've only had this as a child, I've only had this as an adult. And I would say half of that was from an adult and half of that was from a child. And some I never had and some I always had. And it was no surprise to me that in the assessment test, the thing that I tested the lowest on, that was below average, was my ability to process information quickly. This is backed up by the fact that as a child, I was diagnosed with a learning disability, which is vague as shit. That says me nothing. Because you don't know what causes it. So I grew up a lot thinking I was stupid because of this. However, this is still an issue for me, but it only affected me in certain subjects like reading, spelling, basic English, and math. With other subjects like physical education, I was able to nail it. You know, I can learn a dance routine quickly and never forget it. I can memorize lines and act on it on stage, never forgetting a line. And I'm good in history, and I'm good in geology, I'm good in geography. But the subjects that seemed to matter in school, I sucked in because of that. And the thing that I learned is, like, when you have a deadline when you need to learn something by, you know, you put so much stress on yourself that you have trouble grasping it. Whereas when you don't have school or work, you know, you learn at your own pace and there's no pressure, and then you find that you can learn things quicker because there's no pressure, no stress, no deadline. So yeah, that was the only thing I tested below average on. So after this assessment test to see if I had Asperger's, I would later learn to discover that I landed in a gray area where I could either be autistic or have this other diagnosis from another spectrum. Now, if you're a psychologist, a psychiatrist, or you know psychology damn well, you might guess what I might used to have. But it's a spectrum that overlaps with the autistic spectrum a lot. And in fact, 100 years ago, the guy that coined autism and this extreme, severe, I shouldn't say extreme, but severe disorder on this other spectrum, thought it was on the same thing. Until in 1943, a child psychologist is like, or was that a psychiatrist, was like, they're not the same thing. They affect the brain differently, which they do. So these spectrums split. But now, 100 years later, not from 1943, from when this was believed that they were on the same spectrum, it's kind of going back to the same conversation as it was 100 years ago, where this other spectrum that I used to be on, supposedly, is on the same spectrum as autism. And the thing is, with the other spectrum, you definitely need a gene, whereas autism, it could be so-so. You could have a gene, but you also don't need a gene. So, I could either be that or autistic. At the time in 2021, I got the other diagnosis on this other spectrum. Then in late 2022, my psychiatrist began to second guess herself. Whenever she was reading something about autism or the thing I was diagnosed with, she second guessed herself about me. She thought about me all the time. Because the problem is when you have something mild on either spectrum, it's hard to diagnose you clinically because you get either or. Now, the problem is, if you have this other disorder and get diagnosed, or let me say it this way. If you have autism and you're diagnosed with this other disorder, it's not going to really affect you that much. The problem is if you really have the other diagnosis, but you're diagnosed with autism, that could be a little bit bad because you could develop this more severe mental illness on this other spectrum from this diagnosis you have. So it's imperative they get it right, but it's hard to do it when you have a malversion on both spectrums. So having said that, I got a second opinion last May in 2023, and I was diagnosed with level 1 autistic spectrum disorder. Now, this may make sense because I'm sure a lot of you guys know I have some sort of issues when I do videos. Like, I do a lot of repetition, and, I have other mannerisms that might be odd, and that could probably explain it. The problem, though, that I've been having recently is, despite being diagnosed with level 1 autistic spectrum disorder, and they do think it's more mild than Asperger's, just to give you guys a reference. Half of my psychiatrists, half of her colleagues don't seem to agree with her that it is autism. They still think I have the other diagnosis. And the other diagnosis is still listed on my medical journal. Now, she did tell me that it takes a while to change in Sweden, to change diagnosis like that in Sweden. And despite me being labeled with the other disorder still, it's highlighted as unsigned, which means that anyone can change it, anyone can challenge it. Because you can do that in Sweden. Everybody in the medical community has access to your medical journal. And if they don't disagree with something, they can challenge it and they can change it. So, yeah. So you guys know what I'm diagnosed with at the moment, but it's possible I still have the other thing too. So, in May, if I'm brave enough, I might say what that is. I am supposed to speak to a doctor related to my mental health later on this month, so we'll see what happens. Okay. So, at the moment, you guys know that I have level 1 autistic spectrum disorder. But there's a possibility I still have technically the other disorder that's on this other spectrum. So, yay me. So, here's the thing. I don't care, regardless what I have, because it's answers. And personally, I do agree with it. I know there's some people who don't agree with it, and that's fine. But the thing is, if I don't get the proper diagnosis, it could lead to problems down the road if I'm still on this other spectrum. Because like I said, it could lead to something else. Anyway, even if I would be misdiagnosed with autism and rather than this other disorder, I know enough where I can try to prevent myself from becoming that way, for becoming something serious. So yeah. Moving on, I'm getting hot now. Tell us how you got to Sweden. I made a video about 4 years ago. I said that around 4 or 5 years ago about how I came here, but I could talk about it. I came here because of my significant other. He's Swedish, and we had a long distance relationship for like the first 3.5 years of our relationship. When we did meet, he was still living in the States on a work visa, and then 4 months into our relationship, it expired, and he had to move back to Sweden. And like for 3.5 years, we just traveled back and forth between Sweden and Maryland. And then late 2005, during my last visit here as a tourist, he asked me to move in with him. I said yes without hesitation, and that's all she wrote. So yeah, I moved to Sweden for love. Thing turned off again. This is a question for my children. Who is your favorite YouTuber? Overall, at the moment, it's Sam and Colby. Right? I was introduced to them technically through Garrett Watts when he went to the Winchester house last autumn. And then a friend of mine, Angie. I gotta make this quick. My friend Angie, she sent me a video about their Conjuring House series that I watched. And so I became a fan of Sam and Colby. I mean, I do like the paranormal, so that's a major reason why I follow them. But I caught up with the videos they made on their own channels for the last 6 years and stuff. So yeah, they're my favorite YouTuber overall. Like I said, I like Garrett Watts. I like Morgan Adams. And then when it comes to my passions, like for history, I like to watch Early American, and I think it's called Frontier Patriot. Let me just double check. It's a husband and wife team. Let's see, yeah, Frontier Patriot. So, they on her channel, which is Early American, they cook food like it did, like in the 1800s, sometimes late 1700s. And then they review it on his channel, among other things. And then, since I'm also into geology, I follow a guy called Lapland movie maker Johan, who does a lot of stuff involving Malberget. Did I say that right? Malberget. Something like that. It's a town in northern Sweden that has this massive sinkhole that's literally going into downtown right now, making it uninhabitable. And it's splitting the town in half, and a lot of houses have been demolished or relocated and to somewhere else that's more stable, because the mining's creating a lot of seismic activity and landslides and making the sinkhole bigger or creating new sinkholes. So I've been watching his channel regarding that. And then I've been watching Iceland Explorer and Just Icelandic with their coverage over volcano activity in Iceland, especially near Grindavik these days. So yeah. And I'm going to list everybody that I give a shout out to in my description box, so you can follow them as well if you have the same interests and stuff. So yeah. And finally, the last question I have, mostly for my children, and I'm going to drink to this even though I'm going to say it because it's a little painful. God, I hope I don't cry. Okay. Why did Raven die, and how old she became? I think they meant to ask how old she was at the time. So, what is it? Ooh, I feel like it came out of my nose, but shot 4 or 5. Anyway, I'm gonna try to make this quick. So Raven was a dog of ours, and she was a black lab, and I don't think I ever mentioned Raven on my channel, really. Because by the time I started YouTube, she had already died. But, she was playing around in the woods in some water that had fungus in it that was toxic. And she had seizures and all this other shit. And she died from that. And she was 6. And the thing is, this dog liked to swim and be in any water that was questionable for 6 years of her life. Nothing ever happened. Then it rains and this fungus comes out of nowhere and she drinks it, inhales it, and it poisons her. She went from being healthy to being sick to being in a coma, couldn't get revived, and she was put down because they couldn't wake her up. So yeah. Well, that's today's truth and drink. I hope you guys learned a lot about me. I might do this if you give me... How many looks should I have you give me? I don't know. But if you guys subscribe to this channel, my biggest birthday wish is giving me to at least 1,000 subscribers. I know that's asking a lot, but, you know, I would like to have 1,000 subscribers one day. So, yeah. Smash like this video if you like it. If you subscribe, I'll be absolutely delighted, and I'll see you all later. Toodles.